This right here is the Nikon Z6, and after 4 years of using it, I refuse to let it go for a Nikon Z8, despite that probably being the perfect camera for me. But that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. What's up, y'all? It's Project Photography back with another video, and today, before we get started, make sure to follow all of my socials down in the link below. But the Nikon Z8 is essentially a baby Z9 for only $4,000 versus $5,500 for the Nikon Z9. And my gosh, I am absolutely blown away with this camera and how much people have really loved it. Because when I thought about the Nikon Z8 and what its purpose was in the Nikon Z system, you know, people really wanted a Z9 without a battery grip, and they essentially got that with the Z8. I mean, the specs by itself are incredible. If you've seen the Z9, you've seen the Z8 essentially with 20 frames per second, 45 megapixels. I mean, it has a stack sensor, and it'll produce images that will absolutely blow your mind with autofocus that's top of the class. But for me, I have owned the Nikon Z6 for over 4 years now, and honestly, I refuse to get a Nikon Z8 for my landscape photography, and I kind of want to jump in and talk about the reasons why I'm not upgrading. Now, this might sound really petty, but one of the reasons I don't want to upgrade to a Z8 is because I have an entire ecosystem that's based around the Nikon Z6. If I were to go to Z8s, I would have to change all that up. For example, I have L brackets for both of my Z6s, and if I were to change them out for Z8s, I would have to change those as well. And I've just gotten to know the Z6 like the back of my hand. I know essentially all the settings, I know how the camera functions, and when I'm on shoot, I don't have to worry and think about how I'm gonna be capturing or using the Z6 in order to capture photos, where I feel like if I were to change over to Z8 right now where I am as a professional photographer, I'll have to relearn a lot of these things. I mean, I've been using these cameras for over 4 years now. That's a long time, but you know, you come so accustomed to the tools you're using, and as a landscape photographer, I feel like I really don't have to think as much when I'm on location, and that's something that's actually huge for me. I think another big reason is honestly the weight, and this might not seem like a big deal for a lot of you guys, but as a landscape photographer, you know that every gram matters. And when you look at the Nikon Z8 at 910 grams versus the Z6, which is 667 grams, that might not seem like a lot, but if I'm changing out 2 Z6s for 2 Z8s, then that's a 50% increase in weight. And now when I'm hiking 10, 20 miles to a location and I have to be there for a while, I don't really want all that weight and strain on my back while I'm hiking. I'd rather use those resources in other ways, maybe having a better lens or having a nicer tripod and so forth. I feel like we can really utilize our resources to be as resourceful as possible. But I think the biggest reason, honestly, that I would refuse to upgrade to a Z8 or a Z7 or some of the stuff that's gonna be coming out in the future is because when I look at my landscape photography and I think about where I am as a photographer in my life, I really think about 2 roads. There's one road where I wanna become a amazing world-renowned landscape photographer and one where I don't. When I look at the Nikon Z8, that choice between being a world-renowned photographer versus not, by picking up a Nikon Z8, I think it really leads me down to not being closer to my goals of being a better photographer. And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. No one is denying the merits of this camera. I mean, it is incredible. It is a stunning camera with stunning features that, honestly, I know for a fact if I picked up, I would be extremely happy with. But the real question at the end of the day, I think everyone needs to answer when picking up any new piece of gear, doing anything, to be quite honest with you, is that will this make me a better photographer and get me to the end goal of what I want at the end of the day? And here's the thing, the gear that I have isn't the thing that's holding me back from making better photography. It's really not. I've gotten to a point in my career where the locations that I'm shooting at and where I'm going to shoot at matter far more than the gear I have. I mean, there's so many factors that affect what makes a great image, and sometimes the lens and the camera body just isn't the thing that will be the most impactful. I mean, think about what I could do with 4 grand, or honestly, it's more like 8 grand because I'd be upgrading both of my cameras. I mean, I could use that type of money, go to better locations, go to national parks, go to Hawaii again, go to so many beautiful places and capture better landscape photography, not because of the gear I have, but rather because I use that money as an investment in order to get me closer to the goals that I want to achieve. And I think this is just a question that so many people have to answer to, because we always see the new gear that's coming out and it looks so incredible. And I know for a fact I would love to pick it up as much as you guys would, but at the end of the day, it's not the thing that's gonna make us better landscape photographers, you know? I just think that there's so many other things that we can invest our money into and will lead us to the goals that we want in our lives. For me, the Nikon Z8 isn't it. But let's just say something like a Z6 III that comes down the road that's like half the price but has a lot of the same performance, then we're talking about potentially upgrading and seeing the merits behind that. Because I mean, these are 4-year-old cameras, and you know, there's so many things I would love to see in a new Nikon Z6 III. I just don't think the Z8 is it. So even though the Nikon Z6 is quite an old camera, and at this point might be slightly outdated considering where we are with technology, I refuse to upgrade to a Z8, and that's just how it is. And we're gonna go ahead and keep creating amazing content, amazing images, because that's what we do as landscape photographers. We're not necessarily people that are trying to get the latest and greatest all the time. We're out here to create better images. But if you want one, go ahead and get one for yourself. There's no fault in that as long as you can kind of justify it with where you're going in your career. But yeah, that is essentially it for this video. Let me know what you think about my opinions, and would you pick up a Nikon Z8 for yourself? Let me know down in the comment section down below. Also, I made a video up here like years ago talking about the Nikon Z8 and what I wanted its wishlist to be. You should watch it and see, you know, compare what I thought back then versus what the camera is now. Be kind of interesting to watch. Anyways guys, that is essentially it for this video. Make sure to rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.